this afternoon at the Performing Arts Center, as well as those who are watching us online on Rebel TV. Good afternoon to you. Thank you for being a part of our board meeting. The first item, Mr. Chair, is public comment for budgetary and or the millage rate. And so let's check in with Mr. Danner. Mr. Danner, do we have any public comments, sir? Okay, there is no public comment, so let's go ahead and go on to our next item on the agenda, which is number 2, which is online learning update. And we'll turn the floor over to Ms. Rigdon. Good afternoon, Ms. Rigdon.
Good afternoon, Board. I wanted to give you a very, very brief update on our online learning. I did update the FCSS reopening guidance for parents earlier this week. I think it's now dated the 24th. And in it, the only real substantive change that was made was to update the verb tenses since we have started school at this point. So changing that. And also I updated the requirement for online learning so that now students to move into online learning, it would require a doctor's note related to either their health or the health of someone in their home. Our online learning platform does teach the same standards that students do learn in their classrooms, so the standards aren't really changed. The difference is the order. And so students really cannot move seamlessly from one format of education to the other. So for students to move from online learning to face-to-face or vice versa would be extremely difficult for the student. And so we did have parents, we gave parents the opportunity for 42 days to determine if they would like online learning as a preference for their family. From this point forward, though, we are requiring that there is a medical necessity to move into the online learning platform. And so those are the only major updates for online learning at this point. Do you have any questions?
What are the medical reasons that would allow it?
Well, if they would need to visit their physician. If the physician felt like online learning would better suit their health needs, then it would be up to the physician. So we haven't come up with a list of what we'll accept. It basically is up to the family and a physician about whether or not the child should be educated at home. So we don't have like a pre-approved, you have to have one of these conditions in order to be approved for online learning. It just has to be simply an agreement between the physician and the family that it's in the child's best interest that they be at home. And that could also include if they move into the home of an elderly grandparent or someone who's health compromised and the physician felt like that would put the adult in the home at risk, then the physician could also write that. So we're not trying to limit it unnecessarily. It's just that it's affecting students' education when they move between the two platforms, whether it's face-to-face or online. And so at this point, you know, we're 3 weeks in, and so we really need for our kids to have a consistent education.
Any other questions for Ms. Rigdon? Okay, and I'd just like to point out for those who are watching that this document is posted front and center when you open the Fannin County School System website, and we consider it a living document.
Absolutely. The only other changes that were made were, there were a little bit of changes like with contact tracing, a few more details that were in there that might be helpful to parents if they would like to look at it. Or also, we've had lots of discussions about continuing the face-to-face instruction and making sure that we provide a quality education and the same type of education our kids are normally used to. And so, for example, one of the things that we've been concerned about is, you know, whether or not we would be able to sustain after-school sports, clubs, things like that due to issues with staffing or with student health, things such as that. And so this past week we did take delivery on a brand new activity bus so that it gives our kids more opportunity to make sure that we're getting them to their after-school sports events and clubs, things like that, because you don't have to have a CDL to be able to drive an activity bus. And so we're working very hard to provide our kids a quality education in the school setting and outside of school in a very odd and trying time.
Trying to do everything we can to give every child every opportunity to have school.
Absolutely.
During this time. Any other questions or? Okay, well done. Thank you, Ms. Regan. I'd like to just give a quick shout out to technology, doing a great job with that website. And its communication is always important, and it's especially important right now. Thank you for your work to keep that updated. Our next item, number 3, Mr. Chair, is personnel. Defer to you.
Mr. Dewey? I have no need.
We're good.
Okay, sir. Give you just a second to open up the personnel sheet dated August 27, 2020. Okay, the first item is a resignation. Mr. Chair, I recommend the resignation of Terry Lewis, effective 11/1/2020. Make that recommendation.
Chair seeking that motion.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Thank you. The next two are recommendations for substitute transportation, and both of these are pending completion of paperwork, background check, and training. These are Lisa Cheatham and Matthew Story. Make those recommendations, Mr. Chair.
Chair seeking that motion.
Move to accept.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Thank you. The next is recommendations for substitute nutrition. Once again, pending completion of paperwork, background check, and training. Diana Drake. Make that recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Can I get that motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Okay, thank you, sir. That concludes personnel. Next item, and before we move into this, I'll just check in with Mr. Danner one more time. Mr. Danner, any public comment? Okay, thank you. That is number 4, to approve the 2020 millage. And I'd like to welcome our Finance Director, Susan Wynn, up to the podium. Good afternoon, Ms. Wynn.
Today, okay, you can hear me. We have our 2020 millage. Our timeline did not change. That is the same timeline that was approved at our last Board of Education meeting, at our regular meeting. So that's our timeline, which says we'll set the millage rate today. And then all of these items are computation of our millage rate. Shows that's 10.391. These millage rate consolidation sheets that was used to prepare this was received August the 3rd. I do want to let the board know that we received final consolidation sheets August the 18th, where our millage, or where our digest did decrease a little bit, but it was not enough to change our rollback millage rate, because I consulted with Department of Revenue. It was not enough to change anything of our levy or anything else of us adopting. So it only really will just equate to a small decrease in levied taxes of about $22,000. So our rollback rate stays at 10.391, which is what was presented at our August meeting.
Any other changes to the remaining documentation?
No, sir.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this? Well, with that said, it's with great pleasure that I recommend the rollback millage rate for 2020. Make that recommendation happily, Mr. Chair.
All right. Can the chair get a motion?
You have that motion.
Second.
Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Okay, and with the millage now approved, it takes us to our next item on the agenda, which is number 5, to adopt the FY21 budget. Again, the floor belongs to Ms. Wynn.
And this is the same budget that I had presented to you at our August 13th meeting, and the same budget that we advertised in the newspaper. There has not been any changes to it that we present to you for adoption.
Are there any questions about the budget?
Back to the millage, how do we compare with the other counties in Georgia? Do you have any idea?
I have not done a study on the millage for how we compare to other counties. I will be happy to do so and report back to you.
I think the state will do one for us as school districts approve their millages in the coming, in the coming weeks. We'll see that published. Anything else about the budget? I'd like to congratulate Ms. Wynn on a job well done, and I'd like to congratulate this board as well for their conservative governance that's allowed us to make this happen, especially in the middle of a pandemic. Congratulations. Make the recommendation to approve the FY21 budget as presented, Mr. Chair.
Can the chair get that motion?
So moved. Second.
Is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and that concludes the items on the agenda. Turn it back over to you.
Chair seeking a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Thank you so much.